Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Now, Katan, we saw some protests this week regarding our food supply, but not because of the beaver goo that we mentioned last week, but rather genetically modifying of the foods. Now, we're going to talk about that, and also Larry McGee has a report on one man's crazy idea of using nuclear weapons for border control. But first, we're going to report on the United States nuclear program. It seems as if some of the top leaders are being removed one after another, making it unclear who is in charge of pressing the button.
That's a little scary. In Montana this week, the U.S. Air Force removed Colonel David Lynch, who was the commander over a major nuclear weapons unit there. This came after a failed safety and security inspection. However, officials at Malmstrom Air Force Base said Lynch's removal was due to a loss of confidence in him, not the failed inspection.
The 341st Security Forces Group, which Lynch had led since June of 2012, has more than 1,200 personnel members and 4 squadrons. It provides security for the 341st Missile Wing, which consists of 15 launch control centers and 150 nuclear missile silos across nearly 14,000 square miles of central Montana.
That's amazing. Now, this is not the first time a high-profile nuclear commander has been retired recently. In fact, in June, Lieutenant Colonel Randy Olson was also relieved of his duties at the Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. There is no timeline for selecting his replacement. However, Colonel John Wilcox, Air Force Global Strike Command Security Forces Division Director, will take over on an interim basis. Base Commander Colonel Robert Stanley was not available for comment.
And if that wasn't enough change for the U.S. nuclear program, Major General Michael Carey, a 2-star general, was fired this week due to a loss of trust and confidence in his leadership and judgment. Now, the general was from the 20th Air Force, which is responsible for 3 wings of intercontinental ballistic missiles, a total of 450 missiles at 3 bases across the country.
Wow. Details were not available as to why the 2-star general was being removed. However, it was reportedly due to personal misconduct and not directly related to the recently failed inspections of the ICBM unit. Now, all of this comes just days after the second in command at U.S. Strategic Command, Vice Admiral Tim Gardenia, was also fired when information about his gambling activity surfaced, and of course we reported on that last time.
Well, also making the headlines this week, big controversy in the UK as a former government official, Lord Gilbert, offered advice on the Afghan-Pakistani border situation that has many in the UK outraged. Now, YPN's Larry McGee has a report. Larry, this is a former government official, but isn't the title Lord supposed to be a religious title?
Many people suspect so, but according to our research, it is actually not properly a religious title and was used originally in this way to designate men of earthly power. And this week, the Lord and former defense minister of the UK forgot the cameras were rolling and was more candid with an audience than most people would have preferred. Lord Gilbert, a former member of the Security and Intelligence Committee, a defense minister under Tony Blair, and considered an expert in the field of defense, recommended dropping a neutron bomb on the Pakistani-Afghan border as a means of detouring terrorists from gathering there. A neutron bomb is a thermonuclear device designed to murder all life in its path, yet leave physical structures such as buildings still standing and intact. In the House of Lords, during a debate on nuclear disarmament, the Lord Gilbert said, "Up in the mountains between the Afghan and Pakistan border, there is no one living there except a few goats and the people handling them. And if you told them that there was going to be some warheads dropped there and it would be a pretty unpleasant place to be, then they wouldn't go there. And the problems of protecting the borders from infiltration on either side would be greatly reduced." While some pretend to be surprised by the Lord's comments, he has actually praised nuclear bombs for bringing peace in the past. But for the sake of damage control, the spokesman for the House of Lords quickly stated that the Lord's view isn't shared by the government on this topic. Still, many are expressing outrage for the incident, similar to the U.S. Clinton depopulation controversy, where lords become too brazen and speak openly about counsel, which was intended to be kept secret. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Interesting, very interesting. People across the globe are holding rallies against the world's largest frankenfood company, Monsanto. Their rallies are protesting the use of potentially harmful chemicals used in food production. Monsanto says this is the only way to feed the growing globe's population. Now, hundreds of cities across more than 60 countries will take part in these upcoming rallies.
Approximately 85% of all processed foods, and yes, you heard that right, 85% of all processed foods contain genetically modified organisms, or GMOs for short. Now, Monsanto is a multinational corporation that generates revenues in the tens of billions of dollars annually. Monsanto is generating global criticism over the safety of its products and the growing monopoly over the world's food supply.
According to concerned groups, Monsanto is able to patent its seeds with strong patents and in a way that farmers can't keep those seeds to save them over for the next year's crop, but they actually have to lease the seeds back from Monsanto or buy new ones each year. So far, researchers have documented dozens of health risks associated with the consumption of modified foods. The majority of Americans have campaigned for GMO foods to be labeled just like the labeling of organic foods.
Well, so far, the will of the people have been silenced by the money of Monsanto. Now, according to OpenSecrets.org, Monsanto spent almost $6 million lobbying federal lawmakers and food regulators. Now, their payoff came this year with the passing of the so-called Monsanto Protection Act. So you could almost say that lobbying was bribery to get this Monsanto Protection Act for their company.
A rose by any other name. Now, that particular bill is one that gives protection to companies like Monsanto against lawsuits pertaining to the production and sales of genetically modified seeds. According to Jeremy Seifert, the new reality of the world is that chemical companies are feeding us and our families, and it's like lab to table regarding our foods instead of farm to table.
Well, in an effort to widen its power and profit, Monsanto has recently purchased a corporation that sells climate data to farmers. Now, the price tag, a cool $930 million, which was not a problem at all for Monsanto, a company that posts gross profits of $13.5 billion last year. But years before GMO foods were around, Monsanto was already in business.
That's right. The biotech company brought Terminator seeds, pesticides, and Agent Orange to the market. Now, many of you probably will know that Agent Orange was actually used during the Vietnam War, where it's estimated to have killed hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, the people of Vietnam are saying that they're still feeling the effects of the Agent Orange that was used back in the days of the Vietnam War.
All those years ago, still feeling the
That's
effects.
correct, 40 or so years ago. And Vietnam say some 500,000 children currently have suffered birth defects due to herbicides.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, protests around the country are demanding that GMO food companies either be labeled or not sold at all. Now in the U.S., Colin O'Neill, Director of Government Affairs at the Center for Food Safety, says that these companies have the power to push governments worldwide to get their products on the market. He says these marches are raising awareness about Monsanto and other chemical companies.
The overwhelming influence that we see in governments, he continued, is due in part to money. These are major chemical companies, and over 53% of GMO seeds are owned by just a handful of agribusiness companies, so they exert a tremendous amount of influence in politics, back to that lobbying that we were talking about earlier. They also have millions upon millions of dollars to spend to make sure that they get their products pushed through reviews very quickly, and to also make sure that consumers are not informed about the products that they're eating.
Wow.
Well, from untrustworthy generals to thoughts of war and genetically modified foods, one thing's for sure in general, the thoughts of mankind need to be modified to thoughts of peace. That's why we here at YPN News encourage you to contact the Peaceful Solution to learn peace. While you're at it, contact the House of Yahweh to learn how to live a healthy way of life without any harmful side effects. Here's what you can do.
You can write the House of Yahweh at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on either of their websites, www.yahweh.com or www.yeshuahawkins.com. You can email them at info@yahweh.com. And for any calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Up next, Yeshuah Hawkins teaching you how to live a healthy way of life. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.